My name is Lucille Harper, but most people just call me Lucy. I'm 33 years old, a single mom, and the communications manager at a small firm in Oregon. I've spent most of my life learning how to shrink myself in order to survive the Harper family name. But nothing, not my childhood, not my divorce, not even the years of subtle put-downs, could have prepared me for the moment I watched my older brother slap my 6-year-old daughter across the face. And my parents laughed. It happened on a bright summer morning, in the middle of our family reunion, at my parents' lake house in northern Michigan. There were waffles on the table, fresh coffee brewing, and hidden microphones scattered around the room. Part of some ridiculous Harper legacy documentary my father insisted on filming. I remember thinking how surreal it all felt. And then Miles stood up and hit my daughter, because she was singing. Her name is Nora, and she was wearing her favorite yellow sundress with tiny blue birds on it. She was sitting on the floor with crayons and a coloring book, humming her heart out, completely unaware that joy had never been welcomed in that house, unless it came from someone approved, someone male, someone like my brother. When Miles raised his hand, time slowed. But when it landed, when that sharp crack echoed across the vaulted ceilings, and I saw Nora's body jolt and her smile shatter, everything inside me turned cold. My father smirked and muttered, "Well, she needed to learn some shame." My mother gave one of those tight, clipped laughs she saves for moments when she knows something's wrong but refuses to admit it. They didn't realize the whole scene had been recorded. And they certainly didn't realize I wasn't the same girl who used to sit at that table in silence. Not anymore. Growing up as a Harper meant learning your place early, especially if you weren't born a son. My brother Miles was 2 years older, and from the very beginning, he was it. The golden child, the future of the family name, the one who always got the first pick and the last word. By the time I was 6, I knew better than to outshine him. By 10, I had stopped trying altogether. My father, Harold Harper, was a high-profile tax attorney who spoke in deadlines and dismissals. My mother, Marilyn, kept everything polished on the outside. Her hair, the house, the narrative. If something was wrong, we didn't talk about it. If someone got hurt, they must have asked for it. Miles thrived under that system. He knew how to perform the version of himself they wanted. Clean-cut, assertive, obedient to power. He played 3 sports, got straight A's, and never once got grounded. Not even the time he shattered my ceramic rabbit and blamed it on me. I got 2 weeks with no TV and a lecture about being too careless with breakables. I, on the other hand, asked questions. I cried too loud. I laughed at the wrong times. I had opinions about things I wasn't qualified to understand, like why Grandpa stopped visiting after Thanksgiving one year, or why Mom always looked like she was about to break apart when the kitchen was quiet. I wasn't rebellious. I was just inconvenient. By high school, I had learned how to fade. I kept my head down, took honors classes, worked a part-time job, and focused on getting out. I didn't want to be in the spotlight. I just didn't want to be suffocated by their expectations anymore. I met Brendan during my first year at Oregon State. He was kind in a way I didn't know how to receive at first. Gentle, steady, the kind of man who asked if I was cold before taking my hand. We got married too young, mostly because I wanted so badly to build a different kind of home. For a while we had one. Brendan worked in carpentry. I got my degree in communications, and we moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment. It wasn't much, but it was warm, real. When I got pregnant with Nora, everything felt like it was finally settling into place. She arrived on a foggy morning in October. 7 pounds, 4 ounces of pure light. She had Brendan's green eyes and my dark curls, and a voice that could fill a room even as a baby. I remember looking down at her and making a promise I couldn't say out loud yet. You will never feel as small as I did, not while I'm breathing. But life had other ideas. When Nora was 3, Brendan started coming home late. He got distant. There were text messages, half lies, and then full ones. Eventually, there was Claire, his coworker, someone with no kids, no baggage, no stretch marks. Counseling didn't help. His guilt wasn't enough, and I couldn't keep a man who had already left in his heart. We divorced when Nora was 4. I told my parents only what I had to. It didn't work out. I knew how they'd twist it, how they'd find a way to make it my fault. And they did. Men don't leave happy homes, Lucy, my mother said over the phone. What did you do to push him away? From there, it got harder. Money was tight. Childcare was a constant scramble. My job at Evergrove Media barely covered groceries some months, and when I reached out to my parents for help, small things like a car repair or a school fee, they always gave it with a sigh, a side eye, and a warning. You need to be more like Miles. He doesn't call asking for help. Of course he doesn't, because Miles never needed to ask. He was handed everything. I was handed judgment. And yet, I still wanted Nora to know her family, even the ones who never really wanted to know her. When my parents invited us to the family reunion at the lake house that summer, I hesitated. It had been almost 4 years since I'd stepped foot in that place. 4 years since I'd cut a cautious, quiet distance between me and the people who always made me feel like too much and never enough. Are you sure about this? My best friend Danielle asked when I told her. No, I admitted. But Nora keeps asking about them. She deserves to know where she comes from. And she loves the lake. Danielle didn't push. She just gave me that look. The one that says, I trust you, but I'll be here when it falls apart. So we packed 2 small suitcases and headed north to Lake Arbor, where my parents' sprawling cedar-sided house sat like a shrine to old money and polished image. Their lawn was trimmed within an inch of its life. The dock freshly stained. The furniture curated to look coastal, but cost more than my car. We pulled up behind Miles's Lexus and Dad's Mercedes. I took a breath. Nora squealed from the back seat. Mama, can I go see the lake? In a minute, I smiled, though my stomach was already nodding. Let's say hi first, okay? The front door opened before we even reached the porch. My mother stood there in white linen slacks and a pearl sweater set, despite the 82-degree heat. She smiled politely, her eyes scanning me from shoes to hairline. There you are, she said. We were beginning to think you weren't coming. Traffic, I lied. It's good to see you. She bent down and cupped Nora's face. My goodness, haven't you grown? You look just like your mother at that age, hopefully with a little more poise. Inside, the house buzzed with relatives, all rehearsed smiles and sideways glances. My father nodded from across the room, but didn't get up. Miles and his wife, Chloe, emerged from the kitchen, Miles holding a glass of scotch at 10 a.m., Chloe looking immaculate in a silk blouse that probably required dry cleaning after every wear. Well, well, Miles grinned, his voice loud enough to pause nearby conversations. Look who decided to remember the family name. Nora clung to my leg. Hi, Uncle Miles, she said softly. You're taller than I remember, he said, then turned to me. Still working that little assistant gig, Lucy? Communications manager now, I said evenly. And yes, still at Evergrove. He nodded as if mildly surprised. I just closed on a private fund round with 3 tech firms. 7 figures. You ever get to work with people like that? Not directly. He smiled, then turned his attention back to Dad, who clapped him on the back like he'd just cured cancer. I found myself shrinking again, like I always had in that house. Like Nora might, if I wasn't careful. That afternoon, I helped her unpack in the smallest guest room, tucked behind the laundry room with a view of the driveway instead of the lake. Miles's kids, Chloe's nieces and nephews, had the rooms with bunk beds, toys, lake views, and welcome signs. Ours had a fan that rattled and a twin bed that creaked. Mama, Nora whispered. Can I show them my new song later? Of course, I said, smoothing her curls. But maybe wait until after dinner, okay? I already saw it starting. The eye rolls, the condescending tone from the older cousins, the way they excluded Nora with practiced politeness. At dinner, my mom commented on Nora's endless energy, and my dad asked if I'd considered getting her into some structured activity, something to settle her. It was only day 1, and already they were rewriting her brightness as a flaw. But the worst part? I started believing them again. The morning of the second day began like something out of a magazine. Sunlight spilling across the lake, the smell of coffee and waffles drifting through the air, and the hum of voices gathering in the great room, as my mother insisted on calling it. Nora was already dressed in her favorite sundress, the one with the tiny yellow butterflies, twirling in front of the mirror and humming the chorus of her favorite cartoon song. "Mama, can I sing it for them at breakfast?" I hesitated. "Maybe just hum it for now, sweetie. Let's see how everyone's feeling." The great room was full when we entered. Dad was at the head of the long oak table, buried in his paper. Mom was directing the catering staff with military precision. Miles and Chloe were deep in conversation with two of Dad's golf buddies about something involving commercial real estate and international investors. Nora joined the other children at the side table, cousins she barely knew, all a few years older. She offered them a cheerful hi and was promptly ignored. I sat near the window, quietly watching as Nora pulled out her crayons and began coloring. After a few minutes, she began to sing again, softly at first, then louder, the way she always did when she got comfortable. It was a silly tune about friendship and flying kites, the kind that fills your kitchen when you're doing dishes and makes the world feel lighter. But in that echo-prone room, her voice began to carry. I caught Miles's jaw twitch. He glanced over at me. I looked away. "Don't you think she's being a bit disruptive?" my mother called from across the table. Before I could answer, Nora launched into the chorus, bright, clear, completely innocent. And then everything unraveled. Miles shoved his chair back, with a screech against the wood floor. I stood halfway, thinking he was going to tell her to quiet down. He didn't. He crossed the room in long, purposeful strides, and without a word, slapped Nora across the face. It happened so fast I didn't move in time. The sound, the crack, rang through the room like a starter's pistol. Nora gasped and stumbled backward, one hand flying to her cheek, the other dropping her crayon. Her coloring book hit the floor. She blinked, stunned, her lower lip trembling. The red outline of his hand bloomed on her face like a cruel watermark. Time stopped. Everyone froze. Then Miles straightened his shoulders and said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Like mother, like daughter, both useless. Neither of them know how to behave in public." A silence so sharp it could have sliced glass followed. And then, my father folded his newspaper and said, "Well, she needed to learn some shame." My mother chuckled behind her coffee cup. "Lucy never did understand the value of quiet." I couldn't feel my legs as I rushed across the room, dropped to my knees, and scooped Nora into my arms. She was crying now, sharp, broken sobs that tore through my chest like shrapnel. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I snapped, standing, shielding her. "She's 6. She was singing." Miles didn't flinch. "She was loud and annoying. Somebody needed to teach her some manners. Clearly you weren't going to." "You hit a child," I said, barely recognizing my own voice. "You assaulted my daughter in front of everyone." "You're overreacting," my father said, waving a hand. "A little discipline never hurt anyone. Look how well Miles turned out." "She's not yours to discipline." Then, like it had been waiting in the wings the whole time, I saw Paul, my uncle by marriage, standing in the corner by his camera equipment. He looked pale, and he was holding the wireless microphone pack in his hand. It had all been recorded, every word, every sound. I turned to my brother. "We're done here." "Don't be dramatic," my mother snapped. "It was hardly more than a tap." "A tap doesn't leave a handprint," I said, shifting Nora so her cheek faced them all. The red mark was still vivid. Miles's legacy etched across her skin. Miles stepped toward me. "Watch your mouth, Lucy." I stepped back. "Stay away from us." And I walked out of that room, holding my daughter like a lifeline, knowing everything had just changed. Not just in that moment, but forever. Back in the room, Nora's tiny body trembled in my arms. The red imprint on her cheek was fading, but the one in my memory wouldn't. "Mama," she whispered, "was I bad?" I swallowed hard. "No, sweetheart, you were singing, and that's never a bad thing." A knock startled me. "It's Paul," came a quiet voice. I cracked the door. His face was pale. "Lucy." The microphone caught everything. The slap. The things your brother said. Your parents' reaction. I can get you a clean copy before they notice. I blinked. "You'd really do that?" He nodded. "That wasn't discipline. That was assault, and if they can do that in front of people." We arranged to meet by the side driveway in 20 minutes. Then I called Danielle. "He hit Nora," I said flatly. "In front of everyone, and they laughed." "You're leaving right now," she snapped. Back at her apartment, Nora curled up on the guest bed. I sat with Danielle at her kitchen table, holding the flash drive Paul had given me. "You sure you want to hear it again?" "Yes, I need to remember. And I need a witness." We listened. The slap, the silence, Miles calling us useless, my father's smirk, my mother's laugh. Danielle's eyes filled with tears. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Not revenge," I said. "Accountability." The next day, I took Nora to the pediatrician. The doctor documented the mark and referred us to a therapist. That afternoon, I met with Emily, a friend from college who practiced civil law. "This audio," she said, "it won't guarantee criminal charges, but ethically, professionally, it's a bombshell." That night, I drafted 3 emails. Polite, precise, no accusations, just the facts. Attached, an edited clip. Miles's voice, the slap, my father's remark, my mother's laugh. I sent it to the executive board at Kilmer and James, where Miles worked as VP, the board of Aspen Reach, a youth foundation he served, the directors of Horizon Scholars, a mentorship program. I signed it. A concerned parent. Danielle stood beside me as I clicked send. "There's no going back," she said. "Good," I replied, thinking of Nora's voice being silenced. Because if no one else was going to protect her, I would. The fallout didn't take long. By Friday, Kilmer and James placed Miles on administrative leave. The Aspen Reach Foundation removed him from their board. Horizon Scholars suspended his mentorship. My parents tried calling. My mother's voicemails were tearful, my father's texts cold and scolding. Miles's messages shifted from arrogant to panicked. I ignored them all. Then came a call from Grandma Evelyn. "This has gone far enough," she said. "We're meeting Sunday. You're coming." I almost said no, but something in her voice told me this wasn't just another family cover-up. When I arrived, the room was tense. My parents sat stiffly on the sofa. Miles leaned against the fireplace, his jaw tight. Chloe sat by herself, her arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Grandma entered last, her cane tapping rhythm against the hardwood, voice steady. "I listened to the entire recording," she said without ceremony. "Every word." She faced Miles. "You hit a child for singing. Then you called her and her mother useless. That's not a lapse in judgment. That's a pattern of entitlement." He started to protest. She cut him off. "I saw this before. In your grandfather. I said nothing then. I won't repeat that mistake." Turning to my parents. "You laughed. You condoned it. You minimized it. You failed Lucy when she was a child. You failed her daughter now." My mother looked wounded. "She always makes everything dramatic." "She makes truth uncomfortable," Grandma corrected. "That's not the same thing." Then Chloe stood. "I'm separating from Miles," she said, voice controlled. "I let myself ignore the signs for too long, but watching him strike a child and feel entitled to do it, I can't stay in that anymore." My father stood. "You've humiliated this family, Lucy." I didn't flinch. "No, I exposed it." Then finally, silence gave way. A cousin admitted seeing Miles yank her son's arm. An aunt recalled my father hitting me at 12. Paul spoke softly about other things he'd witnessed but never named. We weren't tearing the family apart. We were finally telling the truth. I left without apology, without forgiveness, but with peace. In the months that followed, Nora began singing again. First quietly, then louder. In the back seat, the shower, the grocery store. She joined the local children's choir. I never once asked her to be quiet. 6 months later, we hosted a small gathering. Danielle, Paul, Chloe, Grandma Evelyn, people who saw us, heard us. Nora stood by the window, sunlight in her hair, and sang a gentle song about bravery. This time, I joined her. Because they silenced me once, but I made sure my daughter would never, ever doubt the power of her voice.